Hello, this is Congressional Update with US Representative Ayanna Pressley. I'm Sarah Fishman. How are you doing?
I'm doing well. Good to be with you, Sarah.
Thank you for taking the time to speak with us.
Absolutely. It's important, especially during these times.
Yes, so I want to know which difficult situation would you like to discuss first? Because there are very many on your plate.
True. Um,
Want to talk about immigration and some of the international students who have been kidnapped, abducted.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Why don't we start with that? So how do you feel some of these things have gone? This is an odd question, but what was your initial reaction to the very unusual circumstances that took these people away? And
Mhm.
what have you done since to, address this situation, either in individual cases or, more globally?
Sure. Well, Sarah, it seems with increasing frequency, we have regarded these times as unprecedented, and they are unprecedented in every way.
Mhm.
Rumeysa Öztürk, a Turkish national, PhD student at Tufts University, a resident of Somerville, was making her way to an iftar in the midst of Ramadan to break her fast. So I can only imagine how hungry she was. And then was aggressively and physically approached by plainclothes, masked men who were very physically aggressive with her. And you hear her on the video; it's harrowing. She fears that perhaps she'll be a victim of a crime. She says,
Doesn't
"I'm."
know it's police. She
She
doesn't
doesn't
know it's
know, and she
police.
says, "I'm going to call the police." To
Yeah.
which they counter, "We are the police." And then she is, without any due process, uh, taken away, ostensibly kidnapped. And a judge, a lower court judge had said that she could not be, do not remove her from the state. And of course, they defied that judge's orders. And she was ostensibly kidnapped and is a political prisoner. Her constitutional rights were violated, due process was violated. There's no evidence of any criminal wrongdoing.
Yeah.
Uh,
She hasn't been
she,
charged with anything,
she's
right?
been charged with nothing, and now she's in Louisiana, and because there was no due process, she's an asthma sufferer who takes two medications a day, and without due process and an assessment of her, her mental and physical health, she was taken across state lines, kidnapped, taken to this detention facility in Louisiana without those essential medications, and in fact had three severe asthma attacks
Does
since
she
she's been
have it? Does she have that medicine now? Do you
She
know?
does not have that medicine now. She has received medical care. And we are in close communication, my office, with her legal counsel. So we know that she has received some support, but it is not the medications that she usually takes, the two that she takes as an asthma sufferer. But the point is, this is harrowing, and all people of conscience should be very afraid of what this means for Rumeysa Ozturk and what this means for any of us.
Yes.
She has been disappeared without any evidence of criminal wrongdoing. Um, she simply co-authored an op-ed where she affirmed the humanity of the Palestinian people. And wherever you fall on this issue, even if you disagree, though I don't know how any of us could disagree about centering the humanity of all people, Americans, the safety and our ability to have a just and lasting peace in the region, the Americans, Israelis, and Palestinians, our destinies are inextricably tied. And even if you disagree with what someone is saying, you must stand on and defend their right to say it. And Donald Trump is a dictator, and dictators seek to silence any dissenting opinion or worldview. So she has no evidence of any criminal wrongdoing. The only thing she did was co-author an op-ed, which any of us could do. And so, under these perilous times, with Donald Trump as a dictator seeking to silence dissenting voices, this could happen to any of us, or you could suddenly be disappeared. You could be disappeared for suffering a miscarriage. You could be disappeared for reading a banned book. You could be disappeared for practicing diversity, equity, and inclusion. You could be disappeared for co-authoring an op-ed.
So there's a specific and a broader question. You say that you've been involved with her support system, so I want to hear about that, but maybe we'll open this up a bit. This is so hard to understand in a democracy, how one branch of government can tiptoe around another and let it dodge or avoid or go through every loophole to try to avoid a constitutional crisis, which is what we have now, right? Can you just sort of explain what that is, your understanding of what it is, constitutional crisis?
Well, we find ourselves in a constitutional crisis because we have an occupant of the White House who does not respect the rule of law and the Constitution, and who at every turn seeks to uh, desecrate, degrade, and undermine it by violating people's constitutional rights and by uh, engaging in behavior that is not only cruel and void of common sense and compassion, but
That's a,
overwhelmingly unlawful. I
so
mean, it's harrowing. This the times we find ourselves in reveals how few guardrails exist for the US presidency and how deeply flawed and lacking in character this man is. He has contempt for the American people, contempt for the rule of law, and no respect for the Constitution. It is unprecedented in every way. And
yeah.
that's why, because it is unprecedented, we have to do things we've never done before. As you see with the other situation with Kilmar
Rico.
Abrego Garcia, here the Supreme Court has said this legal resident who has been abducted in front of his 5-year-old child, he is a father of 3, married to a US citizen, no evidence of any criminal wrongdoing. The Trump administration acknowledges that there was an error, like an
And
oopsie,
then an
uh,
administrative error. That's
an
like me
administrative error.
stapling things incorrectly. That's an administrative error. It
And
just
this is
boggles the
somebody's
mind to call
life,
it that.
right? This is somebody's life. And so they have completely disrupted and upended this man's life. They are treating him like a criminal when he is not one. And he's in El Salvador. And so, again, these are unprecedented times. They demand of us unprecedented action. So, in the case of Ramesa Ozturk, I will be traveling to Louisiana.
Oh,
Um,
really?
yes, to in my not only because she is my constituent, but because I do serve on the Oversight and Reform Committee, and so I'm going to go and conduct some real-time oversight. I don't know what will be met with, what if any kind of access we'll have.
Yeah,
I don't have any details at this time about when that would occur, but it is my intention to go, and we're having those conversations. Similarly, when it comes to Kilmar Abrego Garcia, you see his elected officials from Maryland, Senator Van Hollen, recently traveled to um,
San Salvador?
recently to El Salvador. And my colleagues on the Oversight Committee have also called for a CODEL by the Oversight Committee to go to El Salvador, again, to conduct real-time oversight.
But they
So
didn't let Senator Van Hollen was not allowed to see Abrego Garcia, right?
I, that's my
So
understanding. I know he did meet with, I believe, the vice president, or
president, yeah.
yes, while he was there. But let me just say this, Sarah. Um, we may go to federal buildings in the face of unlawful mass firings and layoffs. We may go to detention facilities in Louisiana or El Salvador, and we will likely be met with resistance. But
Mhm.
there is still power and a benefit, and it is still essential that we do these things because it is an unprecedented moment. It demands of us unprecedented things. The rhetoric is hitting differently. The policies are hitting differently. We have to move differently. We have to match their energy. We cannot in any way be complicit in silence or inaction. Sarah, what the Trump administration wants, and I know that the residents of Somerville will understand this keenly. We are in the midst of an extremist march towards authoritarianism. And Donald Trump is a dictator. And the only way to beat a dictator is with defiance. And what a dictator wants is for a citizenry to be ignorant. That's why the work of City TV is so essential because there's a massive communications ecosystem of mis and disinformation. People need accurate information, right? It's also why they are going after our colleges and universities, right? Because they seek to suppress intellectual freedom, critical and free thought, debate and discourse. So they want a citizenry that's ignorant. They want a citizenry that is indifferent, that sees what is happening to a Ramesa Ozturk and says, that's not my problem.
Right,
That whatever Donald Trump wants to do is going to happen anyway, so why should I even try? And they want a citizenry that is inactive. And so they want you to be ignorant, they want you to be indifferent, and they want you to be inactive.
mm,
And that is true for everyday citizens, and it is true for members of Congress because Donald Trump has no respect for the separation of powers, no respect for Congress as a co-equal branch of government. But I'm not going to take any of this sitting down.
yeah.
I'm going to be upfront with my righteous indignation and continue to do everything to use the rule of law in the face of this lawlessness and public outcry and pressure to um, to do everything to get them to reverse course.
So can I ask you, because I can't imagine what your job is like now. And I imagine that your notion of being a congresswoman now, you can tell me obviously, is very different. What your job description might be now from before. First of all, how have you handled that? And second of all, how does that affect what you do on a day-to-day basis? So are you spending a lot of time on the phone as opposed to trying to draft legislation? Because it is so unprecedented. So how has that changed your political life, your as an elected official?
Well, I'm doing everything, and I have, and I'll tell you why. First of all, I'm primed to do it because I've built the muscle to do it. Because when I was elected to Congress, it was during Trump's first occupancy,
Yeah.
and so I have already had to, as people have had to live under a Trump presidency, I've had to govern under one. Now, this is this second occupancy by Donald
So
Trump.
it's so much more really
Yes, it's much more
chaotic.
it's chaotic, it's fast, it's furious. They have
Mhm.
a strategy to overwhelm, to shock and awe us. And so we're having to recalibrate much more quickly in real time to stave off what they're doing. But I've got a blueprint here that I get
Good.
to you know, that I draw on every day. Dr. King said that two things: one, that organizing is our most powerful weapon,
Mhm.
and two, that we have to dramatize the evil. And so, Sarah, what I'm doing in this moment is making sure that the Republicans, my colleagues across the aisle who are operating more like a cult of cowards, complicit in wholesale harm than they are an actual party, make sure that they wear this,
Mhm.
that they can run like they're not doing town halls in their districts, but they can't hide. And the American people are clearer every day that the hurt and harm that they're experiencing, the fear and the worry that they're walking in, the ways in which their freedoms, their fundamental freedoms, are being degraded every day. They are clear about who is responsible for that. And Sarah, we see that um, Democrats, we have our footing, and the American people are clear about who's causing this harm, and we're winning. We're winning in special elections in New York, in Pennsylvania. Um, I think even in Iowa, if I'm not incorrect, and of course Wisconsin,
Yeah,
and in Florida, that was a district that I think it was Florida's sixth that had gone 30 points for Donald Trump, but Democrats came within striking distance.
much closer.
People are inspired by the filibuster of Senator Booker. They're inspired by the hands-off rallies. They're inspired by the Stop the Oligarchy tours with Senator Sanders and Representative Ocasio-Cortez and others.
Mhm.
Um, so we're doing everything. And then the final point I'll make is, yes, I'm still spending time crafting and advancing and reintroducing legislation because, Sarah, I think in order for us to stop this harm ultimately, Democrats have to get the gavel back and be back in power.
Mhm.
And the way that we do that in making the case is not just by how we blunt the harms of this administration in real time, but it's also about what we still seek to affirm.
Mhm.
Because a compelling argument is not, we are not them. We
Mhm.
have to also affirm, who are we?
Yeah.
And so, even if this legislation is not likely to move under this Congress, I still think it's important to affirm, who are we? What does a more just and equitable America look like? And I do think that includes reparations. And,
So
and I do think that includes universal child care and paid leave and more housing that's affordable.
So we don't have a whole lot of time left, and I just wanted to give you a chance to talk to us about what you're doing to address prospective cuts in programs in the upcoming budget and cuts in the federal workforce and regional offices here. And has whatever you're doing been informed, especially by talking to constituents? What are people most worried about losing access to benefits or whatever?
Okay, so first I'll start with federal workers. There are about 40,000 federal workers in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, about 30,000 that are in the Massachusetts 7th, most of them concentrated in the city of Boston. I have been working very closely with federal workers who have had their livelihoods and lives completely upended by Elon Musk, a private citizen, a billionaire, unelected, unaccountable, who's taken a sledgehammer to our the infrastructure of our federal government, eliminating essential programs and essential personnel. And like my constituent Claire from Everett, who was working for HUD, enforcing national fair housing laws, and also a wheelchair user. These are dedicated public servants who deserve visibility and our support. They deserve so much more than a callous pink slip. And what I have found with all these federal workers, Sarah, is who I've done a number of roundtables and listening sessions with, who've attended my town halls. Clara was my guest for the joint address of Congress. The thing that is a testament to how much they care about their country and doing this work is their first concern is not of their own livelihood and lives, but of the work that is unfinished, which has a compounded impact on all of us. Research that will not be advanced, grants that will not be administered,
VA
laws that
doctors
will
that
not be
won't be able to
enforced.
see their patients. I have a friend
Exactly.
who is a doctor who goes to homes for people who can't make it out of their house. VA doctor.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
That's one such example. And I do think it's important that, although I know Somerville is a very well-informed community, that um, again, many of these actions are unlawful, and the executive does not have the authority to dismantle a federal agency. Only Congress has that authority. But what they are doing is that they are degrading the integrity of those institutions through these massive layoffs, and they're doing it all in the name of so-called efficiency.
Mhm.
I don't think it is efficient to make people hungrier or poorer or sicker, which is exactly what will happen with this budget framework, this partisan Republican budget framework that aims to see 1.5 trillion dollars in cuts. So now we go into committee where the actual negotiations will happen about what actually gets cut. And you'll hear the Republicans keep saying, where does it say Medicaid? Where does it say Social Security? Well, it
Mhm.
doesn't say that. But the Congressional Budget Office, which is independent, has
Right.
said there's no way you can do cuts of $1.5 trillion dollars without impacting critical safety nets. There are 80 million Medicaid recipients in this country.
Mhm.
uh, in the Energy and Commerce Committee, where the lion's share of these negotiations and cuts will happen, there is no way you can get to $880 billion in cuts, which is what they've asked ENC, the Energy and Commerce Committee, to do without impacting Medicaid. Sarah, for the
While also increasing in other areas such as
exactly because they want
immigration enforcement and that aren't these, yeah,
well, they want 4 point,
that
I don't know
need
what the 4.5, what
5.4 trillion, maybe?
for it's a tax cut for the
Something big, something very
It's
big.
a tax cut, a tax cut for the wealthy. And Sarah, the other
Right.
thing is, while Elon Musk, an unelected billionaire not accountable to anyone, is slashing and burning the federal government, eliminating essential programs and personnel, he's enriching himself because while he's eliminating those things, he has gained federal contracts for Tesla and SpaceX. So he's being enriched. It's a blatant conflict of interest.
Yeah.
But I digress. The point is, in addition to the $880 billion dollars in cuts from energy and commerce, they've asked for the Agriculture Committee to do cuts to the tune of $230 billion dollars with a B. There's no way you can do that without impacting SNAP. And
Mhm.
so we are just using our defensive strategy of litigation,
Mhm.
um, of legislation. There are bills that we have introduced, Sarah, to try to blunt these harms or slow roll them, including when it comes to tariffs, including when it comes to accessing your data. And we just need three Republicans. You know, Dems are in the minority, but the Republicans only have a technical majority of two.
Mhm.
So we're just appealing to people of conscience and saying, do not cede your power. Do not be complicit in wholesale harm.
Yeah.
Uh, we need three Republicans of conscience, and we can stop this tsunami of hurt, either with the volatility of these tariffs or the lawlessness of these massive firings and they're accessing our data or any other harm. So
Mhm.
our strategy is litigation, which we're winning a number of the federal cases, legislation, agitation,
Mhm.
which you see us doing in multiple ways, the Democrats, and then finally mobilization, which is why when I stood at the Hands Off rally on City Hall Plaza in Boston, it was so inspiring. I think the latest count was we had about 100,000 people. And Sarah, that's what it's going to take to beat back this dictator. It's not just the actions of a congressperson. It is going to require everyday people to do their part, to be defiant in the face of this dictator. And I do want to take a moment to just commend institutions of higher learning like Harvard that are defending intellectual freedom, defending students' rights to protest, and not caving to the demands of Donald Trump. I know that that will have devastating impacts, but the truth of the matter is, caving to Donald Trump, the impact and the outcomes will be 10 times worse.
Mhm.
It's really important that we are defiant and we do not cave to the petulant whims and the dangerous policies of dictator Trump.
On that inspirational note, we have to end. We're going to put up information about the town hall you're having
Oh,
here in
thank you, Sarah.
Somerville. So, but thank you for taking time to go through all this. Lots of stuff to deal with. We really appreciate your fighting the good fight.
We
So
appreciate you. We look forward to being back in Somerville and answering folks' questions. And so I do hope that you will join us, and thank you for sharing that information.
absolutely. This has been Congressional Update. Have a good day.